Good evening. Due to the COVID-19, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. The phone number will also be posted on the screen below the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call, and when it is your turn to speak, you'll be asked for your name and the number of the item that you wish to address, as well as your phone number and address. Further instructions will be provided to you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary Treasurer will unmute you and it'll be your time to speak. The applicant or agent will then be given an opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application, answer any questions that may arise. The maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for that. You will need to state your full name and address for the record, and submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and a maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for each presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes, again, will be at the discretion of the committee. If the applicant or agent will then be provided a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by interested parties and answer any questions for the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly with the proposed conditions, that will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for giving of any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be made no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, agent, or any other person who has filed such a request. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful to the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being viewed, video recorded, and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have one regret this evening, Mr. Hardcastle. Do I have any declarations of pecuniary interests? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm going to declare a conflict on CAV A048 at 377 Dundas Street East. That project is immediately adjacent to a high-rise project of my company.
That's 48, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, I have a note for a request for deferrals. Who is standing by to request a deferral? And if there's anyone in the audience who is seeking a deferral or withdrawal of application, please raise your hand at this time. Heather, I think there's some technical difficulties. I think we keep losing you. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Okay, Mr. Mann has been moved into the meeting, and then it looks like
Okay.
there's someone after that one.
Okay, very well. Good evening, Mr. Mann. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am the architect for the project at 135 Douglas 047 on the agenda tonight. And in light of the concerns and comments from planning staff and the immediate neighbor to the south, we'd like the opportunity to defer so that we can develop the technical studies required to address those comments.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Mann. I do have a note that we do have letters of opposition from a Richard and W. June Hetherington. And they did have concerns of runoff water. And the project, I'm assuming, will be under DSP.
Correct. Yep.
So maybe at that time you'll be able to explain the process to them to alleviate their concerns. And if there are no questions from members at this time, we're happy to take the request for deferral. All those in support? Okay, your application has been deferred, and you'll see the Secretary Treasurer for the next meeting available date when you're ready.
Thank you.
Okay, and I've moved Lynn Renouf into the meeting regarding deferrals.
Okay, I don't see her yet.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je veux savoir si vous parlez français.
Je parle un peu, mais je pense que les autres, pas beaucoup. Can you speak in English?
Oui, je suis capable, mais vu que Canada, on est bilingue, j'aimerais savoir si toute l'information soumise aujourd'hui sera en français.
Toutes les informations, c'est en anglais dans le website, mais in Ontario, we're not required to be bilingual. So we'll take your request.
Je n'ai pas compris. Est-ce que vous avez dit que l'information n'est pas soumise en français et en anglais, les deux langues officielles de Canada?
Non, c'est seulement en anglais dans le website oakville.ca. Et toute la correspondance, c'est en anglais. Si tu as besoin de correspondance en français, tu peux, comment on va dire, faites en demande. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have a capacity to send information in French if someone so requires?
I would have to investigate that with the clerk's department. I don't know whether they have somebody who can translate our documents into French. It's certainly something I can look in. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do it right now. I can certainly look into having the documents if this is something that the town, through I guess the communications department, offers the translation of documents for a resident.
Okay, very well. Madame, tu veux dire que tu es capable d'en parler en anglais. Pour maintenant, on parlait en anglais pour les autres. Et après, on peut, comment on va dire, research. Recherche, merci.
Alors, je veux vous aviser que...
Non, tu peux parler en anglais, s'il vous plaît.
Non, je décide de parler en français, c'est mon
Mais
langue officielle. Et par contre, vous dites que vous serez capable de fournir l'information en français. J'attends pour ça, merci.
okay, I will respond to you in English so that everyone else can understand. I have respectfully taken your request and I have respectfully responded to you. However, there are members of the committee that do not speak French, and under the bylaws of this town, everyone needs to understand what your requests are in order for us to make a decision as a committee. If you choose to refuse to speak to us in English, then we will have to decline your application or your request to speak to the committee at the present time until we are able to speak to the clerk's office and reiterate to them your request and find out where we stand in terms of how to deal with this as a committee.
Merci.
Okay, de rien.
And just, I wish she'd advised us when she was requesting to.
Did she leave a name and a number? Because I didn't get her name and I didn't get her address, so.
No, I just want to say, she had sent an email to attend the meeting. It would have been very helpful if she'd put in her email that she wanted to attend, and she also wanted to know about, she could have asked me previously about this, so we could maybe have had everything ready. There was nothing, she just asked to participate, but it didn't say she would like to participate in French, or I could have hopefully done something prior to the meeting to help this situation.
No, and that's understandable. Thank you. We will look into it and we'll take it from there. Do you know what item she was interested in speaking?
She's still in the meeting. She's still
Okay,
here as a panelist.
But
Did she ask to leave?
She's refused to speak
Je suis
in.
là. Merci
Okay.
beaucoup. Merci.
I'd still like to know what item she was going to address so that we have a note of it in order for you to take all the information back. Madame, si vous êtes là, est-ce que tu peux dire quel item dans l'agenda tu peux adresser?
C'est ma première fois, alors j'attends pour l'agenda spécifique, mais je vous remercie pour parler français. Je vous remercie.
So, just to understand 100%, are you here to speak to a certain item in the agenda or no?
Je n'ai pas compris.
Okay, merci, madame. I would like to say that we are trying to be reasonable, but you are not trying to be reasonable. Let's move on to the next item of agenda. And if you can please mute this individual until they raise their hand for whichever item that they would be interested in speaking to. Heather, did you hear me?
Sorry, yes, she's been moved to an attendee. So when the item comes up, if she would like to speak, she can raise her hand again.
Very well, thank you. Moving on to the next item in our agenda. If there are no deferrals or withdrawals, still pending?
I do not see any further.
Okay, very well. So the first item on our agenda is CAV 041 of 2022-238 Weybourne Road. Again, the item is CAV 041 of 2022 at 238 Weybourne Road. If you are interested in speaking to this item, please raise your hand to be introduced into the panel or call 905-815-6095 and a member of the staff will be standing by to take your call. Who do I have here for this one? Mr. David Nelson, is he with us?
Yes,
I'm here, Madam Chair.
I don't see you. I can hear you. Do you have your camera on?
Oh, I see it is not on. I will start the video, Madam Chair, and there you go.
Very well. There we go. Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, staff. I have read the, sorry, what was that bounce back?
Do you have another device that's open at the same time? That's what causes an echo sometimes.
Okay, my phone is on, but it's not active at the moment.
No, I mean, is it in the agenda? Is it in the meeting?
No,
Okay, I don't know where the echo is coming from then.
echo's gone. That's good. Okay, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I have read the staff report and obviously concur with the recommendation in the report. I have looked at the official plan, Part D, Section 11.1.9, which is the important section dealing with development within an existing community, and have concurred with the staff that we meet those requirements. If there are any questions, Madam Chair, I'm pleased to answer them. Just to note that this application does pertain to a major redevelopment of the property. A portion of that existing building that you see on the screen is being retained.
Okay. And your variances are for private garage projection and a minimum front yard setback.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Nelson or items of clarification at this time? Okay, I see none. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this agenda item, please raise your hand to be invited into the panel. And if no one has or called in, Madam Secretary Treasurer, please let me know and we'll take the matter into committee.
I see no one at this time.
Very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Tulowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this is a unique situation in that the solution here with the variance is actually far better than what the applicant could have come up with without trying to vary the bylaw. I think this solution avoids a very awkward driveway garage configuration because of the lot, and that they've done an excellent job on a court scenario and lining up the with the dwellings on either side. With that, Madam Chair, I believe this application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I don't see any impact from this. I would note that there is no objection from the community. I'd make its approval subject to the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan dated June 15th, 21, and elevation drawings dated February 7th. Something's wrong.
I have June 15, 2021, and then elevation drawings. Oh yeah, there is a misprint.
Something's wrong in that, but we'll just say the elevation drawing submitted with the application. Looks like it's some date in December 21, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Okay.
Sorry, just bear with me one moment and I'll get from the report.
Chair, it looks like they're just dated December 21. There is no actual day on it for the elevations.
Okay, very well. If the Secretary Treasurer is satisfied, she'll put it into the conditions.
Okay, I will make sure that it's the condition read from Ms. Buckerfield.
Okay, and elevations drawing dated December 2021. We don't have an actual date.
Like in her report, it is 17/02/27.
I'm going to jump in. So the plans had a date that didn't make sense on them. So that's why I put in kind of the SIC saying like, this is what it's dated on the plan that was submitted, but it doesn't make sense. But there's also another date on it that says December 2021. So I think we could just keep it December 2021 and we know that that's those plans, or you could say that it's the plans submitted with the application. I can leave it to Mr. Tulowski to decide how he wants to address that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Buckerfield.
I think we can, let's just say both the elevations submitted with the application and the ones I'm looking at says December 2021,
Okay,
no actual date.
okay. Did you get that, Ms.?
Okay, so I just want to clarify,
Okay.
site plan dated June 15th, 2021, and elevation drawings dated December 2021. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, application CAV 042 of 2022 at 143 Viewbank Crescent. Again, it's CAV 042 of 2022 at 143 Viewbank Crescent. If you are interested in speaking to this application, please raise your hand and you'll be invited into the panel, or call 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. So the application for a pool cabana accessory structure. Good evening, Mr. Ribkoff. Go ahead. You're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry,
Welcome.
very much. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm applying for a cabana to have a change room and bathroom next to the pool.
Yes. Did you submit drawings with your application?
Yeah.
Or do you have a presentation handy?
I submitted drawings, yes.
Okay. So town staff will put those up. Okay. Okay. Now that the plans are up, is there anything else that you'd like to say to the committee?
No, I mean, we're going to build the pool this summer along with the cabana.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Members, are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Ribkoff at this time? I don't see any letters or concern from the neighboring properties. If there's no one in the audience that would like to speak to this application, or anyone has called in, we'll take the matter into committee.
I'm showing the applicant actually has his hand up. So did he want to say something else?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just don't want to miss. I don't want them to go into committee and you had something to add.
Sorry.
And I don't see anybody else waiting to speak on this item.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move a motion? We'll take the matter into committee. Thanks, Ms. Murray. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of the request for the variance. Also taking into consideration that there are no members of the public present, no written depositions against, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application, and I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I would like to put forth the following conditions: that the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated January 20th, 2022, and elevation drawings dated August 31st, 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if the building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Ribkoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night. Application CAV 043 of 2022 at 125 Prince Charles Drive. Again, it's application CAV 043 of 2022 at 125 Prince Charles Drive. If you are interested in speaking to this matter, please raise your hand or call 905-815-6095. Good evening, Mr. Lima.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Fernando Lima. I'm the architect of the renovation and addition at 125 Prince Charles Drive. And we are here tonight to request one minor variance, and that is for a maximum residential floor area. Yeah, there you go. Where the bylaw requires 43%, and we are just above 45%. According to the planning staff, we missed the fourth test of the Planning Act. Basically, the project is to increase the garage area there and the second floor addition, and then also to modernize the look of the house to be on one line what we see, in the town was been like a modern design. Yeah, so that's pretty much a very simple application. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Lima. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time from members of the committee? I see none. Has anyone raised their hand? Madam Secretary Treasurer called in for this item.
Yes, I do have someone who has their hand raised, and I will move them into the meeting.
Okay.
Oui, bonjour.
Could we ask that the attendee put their camera on? Thank you.
Non, je ne suis pas confortable avec ça. Mais je trouve que les papiers sont beaucoup trop difficiles à comprendre. Ce n'est pas simple, pas du tout. Alors, s'il vous plaît, est-ce qu'il pourrait trouver une façon de mettre ça plus simple?
Okay, I will translate. I will try. She's finding that the papers that were submitted are too many and very hard to understand, and she'd like for someone to further explain. And I'm not sure we'll be able to do that in French. Mr. Lima, do you have that capacity?
No, I wish.
Okay. Madame, si vous désirez de comprendre ou peut-être poser des questions, je recommande de parler en anglais pour obtenir toutes les informations que tu désirais ou vous désirez. Mais la communication dans une direction, c'est pas confortable pour tout le monde et c'est pas juste pour tout le monde. Je comprends que vous préférez de parler en français, mais pour l'instant, maintenant, on a une situation de... c'est important que tout le monde comprenne.
Mais ce n'est pas ma responsabilité de parler les deux langues officielles du Canada. C'est votre responsabilité de traduire.
Oui,
et je trouve que le monsieur a présenté des papiers qui ne sont pas faciles à comprendre. C'est très difficile à comprendre. Ce n'est pas simple.
OK, mais j'ai essayé d'aider vous. Mais vous êtes très... comment on va dire? I'm going to say this in English because I know you understand it. I'm trying to be accommodating to you, which I'm not really supposed to given the fact that everyone else cannot understand this conversation that is happening between us, but you are not being respectful in return by allowing us to conduct the meeting in English at the present time and dealing with your concern about having the material in both French and English at a later time. If you had given the Secretary Treasurer enough time, we may have been able to bridge this gap. But since you chose to cunningly or strategically wait until the time of the meeting to declare your discomfort with the language and the issue of bilingualism, whether it be in Ontario or Quebec or in the province or federally, that is not the platform to deal with this right now. Right now, as a committee of adjustment, we have an application that is before us. We have to make the decision that is required, and you are just wasting our time and not facilitating our ability to give you the information that you need. So I'm going to give you a choice. Either you allow the applicant to explain the application in English and give you the information that you so desire, or I will ask you to leave the meeting and we will have to deal with this at a later time with town staff and leadership. But I am not in a position right now to deal with your concerns when you are making everything so difficult. So what is your choice? Would you like the applicant to explain to you the application and give you the material in English and later on provide you with French, if at all possible? Or would you like to leave the meeting without the information that you desire? Those are your only two options.
Merci, Madame Présidente. J'aimerais ça en français, merci.
OK. Je m'excuse. C'est pas possible de... I'm even losing my train of thought, trying to toggle between English and French, and I'm trying really to... Okay. Madam Secretary Treasurer, can we please take the information of the interested party? And I don't know how this is the first time we've had to deal with a situation like that. I'll leave it in your hands. Mr. Lima, just for the public, I know you've done your presentation, but would you just kindly go through your variances one at a time? I understand that you are doing a ground and second floor addition, and you're really applying for one variance, which is a maximum residential floor area of 43%, going up to 45.18%, which is approximately 114 square feet. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Madam
if
Chair,
you can just, yes.
I just want to clarify, this was not the application that the resident initially was interested in. So I just want to clarify that the resident would like an explanation on this application as like this one on 125 Prince Charles Drive.
That's a good question. I don't know. She's not giving me any information. She just keeps requesting the information in French. I don't even have her name. Do you have her name?
Well, obviously we're not going to say everything. The resident did email me or emailed to the COA. So I do have her contact information. I do have her email. I do have her address, and I do have her phone number. At this point,
Okay.
I cannot, we're in the midst of a meeting. I cannot leave this meeting to find out about getting the documents in French at this moment. It is something I can take away from this meeting.
Can you provide me with her name so I can address her with her name?
Her name is actually, it's under item 6.5.
Okay.
And it's Lynn Renouf.
Madame Lynn Renouf. Okay. Madame Lynn Renouf. Votre nom, c'est ajusté avec le item 6.5. C'est pour CEV 045. L'adresse 46 2nd Street. Est-ce que vous êtes sûr de demande d'information pour l'application maintenant 043 of 2022 at 125 Prince Charles Drive?
Merci,
Ou
Président.
vous êtes did you make a mistake?
Je suis toujours intéressée à la politique et j'aimerais ça que tout le monde sache que c'est bilingue ici en Canada.
Okay, so now we get to the bottom of it. She's really not attached to any particular application. As I understand it, she's interested in the politics and the bilingual issue.
Okay,
Mais
so,
Madame Président, vous ne parlez pas pour moi.
Well,
Je parle
I'm simply saying what you said in French. I'm reiterating what you said. You said you're interested in the politics
votre
and your...
traduction n'est pas correcte.
OK, et c'est mon traduction, c'est pas correct. Vous êtes parlé en anglais et dit, qu'est-ce que tu veux? Parce que c'est terrible. This is very disrespectful. If you want to say something, then you should say it for everyone to understand it.
Madame Président, je ne comprends pas votre...
OK, et moi aussi, je ne comprends pas. C'est final. I'm sorry. Does anyone else understand what she's saying other than me?
Just to confirm, Madam Chair, the email, in her email, she's asking to participate in the hearing regarding application CAVA 0452022, parish banning at the address of 46 2nd Street. That is when she requested to participate, that's the information I got. I didn't get a request just to participate, that I could, absolutely, she can be invited and speak to any application she wanted. Her email, though, was specifically for that application.
Okay, I can't keep doing this back and forth, and I can't be the only one wrestling with this. So for the benefit of everybody, Mr. Lima, I would like to be erring on the side of caution. I know you've already done your presentation, but since this interested party has requested more information about your presentation, I would like you to do one thing very simply. Go through your variance and the reason that you're seeking that variance request in a simple format so that the members of the public can understand it, and then we will take the matter into committee. And I appreciate your patience.
No problem. So as I said before, it's just one minor variance, and that is to allow a addition to take place at 125 Prince Charles Drive. The bylaw requires a 43% residential floor area ratio, and we are at 45.18%. The addition is basically at the front of the house. Maybe up on the screen will be easy to see, but it's at the front of the house and on the second floor. And then there's not really much to say. It's basically so simple.
Okay, I appreciate you taking heed to my request and going through this again. Members of the committee, do you have any further questions or items of clarification of Mr. Lima? There has no one else that has called in for this application, so we will take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written application, as well as noting that the town's written staff report is in support of the application. Also noting that the building that is being constructed, I find there's no negative impacts on the neighborhood. Also finding that it does meet the town's official plan and bylaws I would like to note that there were no oral objections or written objections for this application that I am aware of. And so I am prepared to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for. I'd like to include that the following two conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated February 2022. And our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lima.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Application CAV 044 of 2022 at 241 Savoy Crescent. Again, application CAV 044 of 2022 at 241 Savoy Crescent. This is an application for a new dwelling with a rear yard and a lot coverage variance. Who do we have here representing? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Demchak. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Paul Demchak with the...
Sorry, give me a second. I do need to read the number again. If anyone's interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. Sorry for that interruption. Go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you. My name is Paul Demchak with Vittori Management. I'm the planning consultant on behalf of the applicant at 241 Savoy Crescent. The subject property at 241 Savoy Crescent in Oakville is currently occupied by an existing single-story detached dwelling, and the landlord does seek to improve the site with the construction of a new two-story single detached dwelling. Next slide, please. So there are two variances being sought this evening. So the subject site is zoned RL2-0, residential low zone within the Oakville zoning bylaw. So the two variances are being requested are for maximum lot coverage from 25% to an increase to 27.3%, which is an increase of 22.5 square meters, as well as a slight reduction for a portion of the dwelling, which I'll explain in a moment, to the rear yard, going from 7.5 meter requirement to 7 meters. Next slide, please. So here is a site plan of the proposed dwelling. So this dwelling siting and the L-shaped floor plan that has been proposed is a unique design for the property, but does look to utilize the site's irregular shape, essentially to try to ensure compatibility with dwelling placement within the area, as well as maintain adequate overall rear yard amenity area on the site, as well as while aligning the front and rear walls, of adjacent buildings. So I'd like to point out, for the benefit of the committee, there are two, I'll call it, lot depths on the property that you can see, one being obviously much shorter than the other. On that portion of that property, the existing dwelling is actually roughly 6.33 meters away from the rear yard. And my client is proposing to reconstruct, obviously, a new two-story dwelling with an increase to that portion of the dwelling in the rear yard condition to 7 meters. And the balance of the subject property, including where I'll call it the L shape extends, all complies with the rear yard setback. And the L shape, again, is sited and designed appropriately to try to maximize my client's rear yard amenity space for their own benefit and use. I will note that obviously the front yard setback aligns with the average setbacks on either side of the lot, as well as the rear yard that I mentioned, aligning as well with the neighbor, which is located on the left side of this current site plan. I'd like to flip to the next slide, please. So while I note that the proposal is 2 stories in height, it does have the appearance of being substantially smaller than some dwellings within the vicinity of the neighborhood. And my client has, in my opinion, worked well with the existing lot grading to basically keep what you see, the built form of what's on the site today to what is being proposed. And that includes the existing location of the existing garage and working with the topography as the site changes in grade elevation. Next slide, please. So this is just the rear elevation for the benefit of the committee. Next slide, please. This is the south elevation. So this is looking from the shorter side of the 2 lot lines. Next slide, please. And this is being the north elevation on the other side of the dwelling. So from my perspective, the architecture of the home and the design and siting has been carefully considered in terms of its materials, proportions to ensure compatibility with adjacent properties and the local context. It is my opinion that the massing and the proposed dwelling is not out of character with the context of the immediate neighborhood. If I could flip to the next slide, please. Just finally, just for the benefit of the committee, I have read obviously the staff report as well as my client has, and we have no comments with the conditions and comments from staff. It is my opinion that the proposal does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and the development fits within the existing streetscape and context of the neighborhood. I am before the committee and would be happy to answer and assist if there are any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Jemshek, are you aware of the late comments by Oakville Hydro with respect to the new underground service and that any additional relocations due to conflicts would be, you've read that comment?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I have read that comment. My client has read that comment. That is obviously, I would say, a typical comment, and it's intended that we connect the new dwelling through that protocol. So yes.
Okay, very well. Are there any other items of clarifications or questions of Mr. Demchik at this time? Ms. Murray, go ahead.
Just one quick question through you, Madam Chair. I note that staff notes indicate that as a condition of approval, staff recommended that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning to allow for further review. The tree, there's a tree proposed to be removed, and would that be satisfactory to the applicant?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and for the benefit of the committee, we have reviewed that comment from staff with myself and my client. We have no concerns with that comment. We're happy to work with Forestry and Development Engineering Services through that process.
Very well. Any other questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. If no one has called in for this application and is interested in addressing it, we can take the matter into committee. Madam Secretary Treasurer?
I see no one at this time.
Okay, very well. Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another application tonight that's appropriately addressing constraints of the lot that it's sitting on. Madam Chair, I'm happy to move approval of this application. I find it meets the 4 tests of Planning Act. The rear yard variance is very technical due to the configuration of the property. I'm satisfied that there'll be no impact from the coverage variance given the design of the building and the fact that the applicant is not proposing to maximize building height. I would also note that there's no objection from the community. I would make that approval subject to dwelling being built in general accordance with site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and elevation stated February 11th, 2022, and that a building permit issued within 2 years.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night. Application CAV 045 of 2022 at 46 2nd Street. Again, it's application CAV 045 of 2022 at 46 2nd Street. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. And if you're in the audience and you'd like to speak to this matter, you may raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will promote you to speak. I do have a letter of concern from a Ms. Tanya Crook. I'm assuming Ms. Villa has already seen it and will address it in her presentation. Go ahead, Ms. Villa.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and the members of the committee. My name is Emily Villa and I'm from the Office of John Woolman Architecting. I'm here to represent the owners of 46 2nd Street. If you could please turn to page 4 or slide 4. Yeah, just for the benefit of the members of the committee, just wanted to show the front elevation, and if you could turn to page 3, please. As you can see, it's the proposed dwelling is located in the middle. Excuse me, and a variance is requested in order to permit the construction of a new 2-story dwelling with a maximum of 27.7%, whereas the maximum is 25% permitted in this zone. And we consulted with planning and heritage staff during the development of the proposed dwelling, and taking into consideration their concern of scale and massing, we worked closely with heritage and planning, and we maintained a maximum lot coverage of 24.95% for the main house. And so the requested increase in the lot coverage is due to the proposed covered area at the front entrance, which is a heritage, what heritage considers to be characteristic of homes in the heritage area, and for the rear 1-story covered porch. And we have read the staff report, and they are in support of the minor variance, and that they are of the opinion that the application satisfies the applicable test under the Planning Act. And if you could turn to page 1, please. That's just showing the full site plan. So I'd like to address the neighbors and email inquiry to the Secretary Treasurer regarding the additional information on the protected trees. There will be a separate approval application to the town, and we are working with the arborist as we follow the regulations set by the private tree bylaw with respect to the protection of the private trees to be retained and the neighboring trees within 6 meters of the property line. So as part of the bylaw, there will also be replacement trees for every private tree to be removed. This is a work in progress right now as we consult with the arborist and also with the landscape designer. But I can assure you that the neighboring trees will be protected. So I hope that answers the email inquiry. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Villa, can you address the cedar hedge that's on the property of the neighbor that separates the front driveways?
Right now, it shows the property that will be protected. And it will show when we submit our arborist report and during the DSP application, it will show that that will be protected.
Very well. Thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any questions or items of clarification, Ms. Villa, at this time? Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone requested to speak to this item on
yes,
the agenda?
There are a couple of people, so I'll just move them in one at a time.
Sure.
I've moved Tanya Crook in and Lynn Renouf.
Hi, it's Tanya Crook speaking. Thank you for your explanation about the arborist plan forthcoming in the DSP process. I guess I'm not familiar with the town's process. I appreciate that the cedar hedge is being protected. I have a question. There's a tree that's got a number on it called 0779 on the front lot, on the front side of the property, and I was wondering whether that has also been deemed protected at this point in time.
To you, Mr. Chair, if someone could bring up that site plan application, site plan slide 1, please, just to be sure I understand what the question is.
So on the south side of the driveway is a large tree that is numbered 0779. And I was just wondering whether that also has been deemed protected at this point in time.
Is that the tree that's at the town possession?
Well, I'm not sure if it's the town or mine, but basically it's the front of the driveway.
Yeah, anything to be retained. I think at that point, any tree that you're seeing there that is at the outside of the property, that will be protected.
Okay, and then we have a shared, I guess, in the backyard as well. There's some green foliage between the two backyards. Wondering whether that also has, at this point, been deemed protected.
Yes, and it will be shown in the application or in the arborist report, I should say. I'm not sure which one is shared. I think it's either your trees or our, the private trees. But the trees that will be yours, they will be protected.
Okay, thank you. And do we have visibility as into the arborist plan at a time in the future?
I'm not sure how the town handles the visibility, but we will be submitting our arborist report and the grading plan, etc. Those are things that are required during the DSP application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Catherine Buckerfield has her hand raised.
Miss, I can't see anyone when we're still in the presentation view. Sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. I wanted to chime in and just clarify that this property is zoned RL3, so it's actually not subject to the DESP process. So it would be through the private tree bylaw that this would be dealt with.
Okay, so under the private tree bylaw, what recourse do the neighbors have to obtain information?
With that, I can't say offhand exactly, but I think it would be to the best interest of this applicant to be communicative with their neighbor through this process. And if it is a boundary tree, they would have to have explicit permission from their neighbor prior to the removal of a tree. So there's it would be through that process. They, like I said, if it was on their property or shared, the neighbor would have to be aware of it.
Okay, very well. So Ms. Vea, since this has been clarified, I will expect that you will be able to converse with Ms. Kirk and deal with it according to the private tree bylaw protocols.
Yeah. Yes,
okay. All right. Who else is waiting to speak to the committee?
Lynn Renouf.
Madame Renouf, bienvenue encore. Okay. Perhaps she has decided not to address the committee anymore. If there's no one else waiting or has called in, we can take the matter into committee.
I do not show anybody else at this time.
Okay. Very well. Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Madam Chair, to clarify, we're prepared to take motions?
Yes. I've called for Madame Renouf, and she has not chosen to address the committee, although she did have her hand up. And so now the matter is in committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note the staff report is in favor of the application, and having taken into consideration the comments from Ms. Crook and it appears that the applicant has addressed some of those concerns, as well as Ms. Buckerfield. So thank you very much for that. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application, subject to the following conditions, which that the new dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated February 15th, 2022, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Good evening, Madam.
Thank you, Ms. Vea.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Okay, application CAV 046 of 2022 at 184 Inville Crescent. Again, this is application CAV 046 of 2022 at 184 Inville Crescent. If you're interested in speaking to the application, please call 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. If you are in the audience and would like to speak to the matter, please raise your hand and you will be invited into the panel to address the committee. I do have a letter of opposition from a Ms. Sherry Della Pena, and I do have a letter of support from a Mr. and Ms. Jennifer and Mr. Andrew Cooper. I do note those. Who is representing the applicant? Mr. Clark, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. What we're looking to do is reduce the setback on the flankage lot line. Sorry, I just lost my my notes. Anyway, so we're just looking to reduce on the flankage side for the existing shed in the pool. And that's all we're looking to do on those sides. And then I've seen that the town has no issues with that. Do you want me to speak, Madam Chair, to the one lady that had an issue with the pool?
Yes, yes, please. Because
so
you are coming close to the flankage line and you can address where she is compared to where you are as well.
Yeah, so she's one property over from the current pool area. The only thing that the clients have done, they've spoken to a lawyer, obviously, stated that they plan to follow the noise pollution laws, right? I mean, the only response from the lawyer is that it holds no merit, but outside of that, that's the only guarantee that they've made. The client that is in agreement is next door neighbor as well. They're good people. There's no reason that they wouldn't follow the bylaw for noise pollution and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. If that's the end of your presentation, we'll take it to the committee. Go ahead. Is there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Clark at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if you'd be kind enough to let us know if either of the parties are interested in speaking to the committee.
Okay, if you are in the meeting and wish to speak to this application, you would need to raise your hand and then I can move you into the meeting. Okay, I do not see anyone at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Mr. Hardcastle, sorry, Mr. Flemington, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the application before us and as well as noting that the town staff written report is in favor of the application, as well as noting that there was one email letter of opposition, of which I think that the applicant is addressing those concerns directly with that neighbor. Also noting that there was a letter in support of the application. I do want to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for. There were no oral objections from the public at the meeting this evening. And I find that the variances do meet the tests of the Planning Act, and that there will be no negative impacts from the construction of the pool. I would like to include the two following conditions. Oh, no, sorry, there are none. Sorry, hang on. There are two. Sorry.
Yes, there are two.
Yeah, sorry. That the proposed pool and existing shed be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated August 11th, 2021, subject to obtaining a pool permit from Transportation and Engineering. And then the second standard one, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Good evening. Okay.
If you'll just bear with me a moment, I'm just going to have to move Mr. Tulowski from the meeting.
Yes.
And I'll let you know when that's done. Okay, we're all set to go with the next application.
Okay, application CAV 048 of 2022 at 377 Dundas Street East. Again, it's application CAV 048 of 2022 at 377 Dundas Street East. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, it's 905-815-6095, or simply raise your hand if you are in attendance and would like to speak to the matter. I do note that we do have one letter of opposition from Mr. Naveed Sayed, and it's been noted.
Okay, I'm not sure who to move in the meeting. Okay, here we go. I'm just saying there's lots of participants, so I'm not sure which ones want to be moved. So just one moment.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Flemington.
It's still showing Mr. Tulowski on my screen here.
Oh, yeah, I see that too. He's muted.
He's actually in what's called the waiting room. Like I show him in the waiting room. Like I don't think we physically can delete him. So otherwise he wouldn't be able to come back. But he is in the, but thank you for noting that. But I'm clarifying that he is actually in what's called the waiting room.
Very well. Good evening, Ms. Anderson. How are you?
I'm well, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm hoping you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I am here representing Daniels and M. Shi for the application 048 2022. I know there are also representatives from Daniels as well as the traffic consultant who are available if there are any questions. We're here this evening for a number of variances. There are 7 in total, but all of them relate in some respects to height and to parking. Many of them are combined. I'm in the committee's hands. I have read the staff report. We did provide some background information. And I know there is a letter from a resident, so I'm happy to walk through a very brief presentation. I think that will help provide the context given the scale of this application.
Agreed, definitely. Go ahead.
Thank you. The next slide, please. So just in terms of the physical location and context of this site, this site is located at 377 to 411 Dundas Street East. It's on the north side of Dundas and just west of Post Ridge Road. And it has access from Post Ridge Road onto Silver Maple Road. This site was actually part of a registered plan, 20M 1185. And the site itself is known as Block 14, and it is one of the last remaining blocks to develop within that draft plan of subdivision. The next slide, please. So the application itself has been the subject of a site plan that has been through iterations and review with staff. The site, as I mentioned, is within the Trafalgar Urban Core Area 4 in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. And it is zoned Trafalgar Urban Core with Special Provision 31. And the site plan itself consists of what I'll define as 3 development blocks within it. Block 1, which is the building located to the west, is proposed to be 17 stories on a 6-story podium with approximately 265 residential units. The central tower, which is known as Block 2, is 15 stories in height, and again, on a 6-story podium that is shared with the Block 1 tower. And it is proposed for 180 units. And the third block, Block 3, this is a purpose-built rental building proposed at 15 stories that wraps around the corner of Dundas and Post Ridge Drive and is proposed at 254 units. The development itself includes a number of outdoor amenity areas, as well as underground and surface parking. And I will note that the floor space index that is permitted here at 5.0, we're actually proposing less than that at 4.42. The next slide, please. So as a result of working through the site plan process and design with planning staff and urban design staff, a number of changes have been provided to the current design that provide for overall improvements and allow for the overall development to be implemented. And so there are a number of variances that we are requesting, and I'll go through those briefly. I will note that in many cases, these variances are very specific to a particular location on the site plan and very specific to what I would call a pinch point in the design. So one of the first variances relates to the minimum parking aisle. And that particular variance is requesting an aisle width of 5.0 meters for angled parking, 60 degrees or less, whereas the 5.5 meters is required. And as you can see from the diagram, we're illustrating the location of where those 2 pinch points are that we require this relief. And it's only at those 2 locations. The next slide, please. So we've combined variances 2 and 3. Both of these variances relate to height, and one is the maximum height of 15 stories, whereas we are seeking 17 stories in Block 1, and the other relates to metric height, whereas we are seeking 58.31 meters in height, and the maximum height in the zoning bylaw is 47 meters. So again, this is to accommodate the additional 2 stories on the Block 1 tower. The next slide, please. Variances 4 and 6, again combined, and these only relate to Tower 3, which is the purpose-built rental building. And the purpose of this variance is to allow the minimum main wall height of the building to be 10.7 meters, whereas 12 meters is the minimum that is required. And the reason for this is to accommodate the purpose-built rental floor design at this particular portion of the building as it wraps around. The next slide, please. Variance 5 again is related to that Tower 3 or the purpose-built rental building, and again, a slight design accommodation to provide for a minimum first floor height of 3.42 meters based on the units in this particular location, whereas the 4.5 meters is required. And the next slide, please. So the final slide actually relates to parking, and it's worded in a way that may not be as clear as possible, but I hope to sort of explain it in layman's terms, is to permit the 140 parking spaces for residential, visitor, daycare center, and commercial uses with 0 queued parking spaces for a daycare center. So we have a unique opportunity on this site to provide for a daycare facility, but the specific zoning provisions in the bylaw require queued parking spaces. And in the context of queued, it's not intended to be what we think of as queued parking in, say, a kiss and ride or a drive-through. These are actual parking spaces that people park in to then go into the daycare to drop off and pick up their children. So we're actually not proposing to reduce those spaces or reduce overall parking. In fact, the variance is being sought to accommodate a shared parking scenario whereby the visitor parking spaces that would otherwise be provided during those drop-off and pickup times would be available to the daycare center if it is developed within the one tower. So on that basis, there was a detailed parking justification report that was prepared by Leah Consulting and submitted in support of the variance application. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I have read the concerns in the letter from the resident, and I would note respectfully his concerns with respect to the additional height and increased number of units, as well as the concerns about reducing and removing parking. It's my submission that the number of units actually in the development are below the maximum 5 FSI. So albeit that there is a request for 2 additional stories, the number of units actually in the floor area could be increased to greater than what is being proposed, even with the height increase. And I would also note that the traffic has been addressed through the site plan process, but more importantly, the parking variance is actually for shared parking and not intended to reduce or remove any of the required parking. So Madam Chair, I'm open to questions from the committee and appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Are there any items of clarification? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Yes, thank you through you, Madam Chair, to the applicant. I understand the queued parking, and if it's daycare, of course, you can't do a kiss and ride. I'm assuming the child is under 5 years of age and has to be walked in. However, during commercial or business hours, it's conceivable that those parking spots upon pickup, they could be occupied commercially, so there wouldn't be enough spaces.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the member. There has been an identification that if those parking spaces are allocated at that particular time, very similar to other developments that have shared parking, there would be signage and identification that they're being utilized for that particular period of time for the daycare center. So very similar to clients that are attending a particular location with assigned parking for a particular site within a multi-use commercial development, there would be that type of signage that could be available. And again, I would note that this is for the potential for a proposed daycare, which we hope to have an opportunity to accommodate should the variance be considered and approved.
Okay.
Follow up, Madam Chair. I don't understand or appreciate the justification for the 2 additional floors at this time. Why do we really need to go beyond 15?
So if I can speak to that, Madam Chair, that was the subject of much discussion with planning staff. The staff through the site plan process had asked for what I'll call articulation and variation in height. Given the recent changes to the North Oakville East secondary plan and the consideration of increased height for this particular node, there is a general policy direction in the official plan to provide and allow for that, although it is set at 15 in the zoning bylaw. So through our review and assessment, as well as the staff's, we believe that that is within the general intent and purpose of the bylaw. This project does balance purpose-built rental with condominium development. And overall, we've worked several design iterations to accommodate the best design, meeting all the requirements through the various requirements of the building, and had those discussions with regional and local staff.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Flemington. Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in relation to that previous comment, I was wondering if the staff could give their perspective on it with regards to, the increase in the extra 2 stories being within the purpose and intent of the plan. Like, I just like to hear staff's comments with regards to that.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson's correct. Through conversations with town staff, there's discussions around the ability to kind of allow for variation and transition from the node at Trafalgar and Dundas. So the building beside them, as you know, a few years ago had an increase to 20 stories, which is consistent with the official plan direction at that time for allowing for 20 stories at that corner. So it met the intent of the official plan. And in this situation, we're seeing a transition from that 20-story building down, as you see on the other side of Post Ridge, is the 8-story building. And from our perspective and our opinion is that it meets the intent of that policy direction to allow for that variation. And as Ms. Anderson spoke to, the buildings don't meet the ultimate FSI, and the transition as well as in floor plates are appropriate on the site. So she's correct in terms of that transition. Ms. Murray, I think, has another question.
Sorry, is that satisfactory, Mr. Flemington, or can I go ahead?
Yeah, that is. I'll have another question when you're done. Go ahead.
So at this point in time, again, adding 2 floors, I'm deeply concerned. We have a 20-story tower, then a 17, a 15, and a 15. On the southwest corner, we have 2 brand new towers. And at the end of today's meeting on Dundas, we have another to approve. And I can tell you, I'm concerned about the traffic. There was an accident today on Dundas, not far from this location. And the volume of traffic and cars, they've just, I just don't know how all of this is going to be accommodated. And along with the safety of pedestrians. You can't make Trafalgar any bigger. It's already been widened. You can't make Dundas any bigger. It's already been widened. So I'm deeply concerned. And while I appreciate the town planner's comments, you're not dealing with the accidents and the traffic volume up here. So it's it's a statement, it's a concern, and I'm not inclined to support 17 stories. I'm just not.
Who would you like to speak to first, the applicant himself?
Mr. Flemington, is your follow-up question connected to Ms. Murray's comments? Because I know Ms. Anderson said that there was a traffic consultant and she'll probably want to address that. And then I know Catherine has something to say as well, but.
I think right now, let's just continue to address Ms. Murray's.
Okay.
And then.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to, one of the people had their hands up, but now they're not. Oh, there we go. I'm just going to move somebody into the meeting. It'll just take a moment. I believe it's one of the consultants.
Okay. Catherine, go ahead until the consultant with Ms. Anderson comes through, and then I'm sure they'll have more to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was going to say is that we would be relying on our the traffic consultants and the reports that they're providing, because they're the experts in that realm. And I think we may actually have someone that can speak to it, an expert here. So I think I would like to defer to and then the applicant also is here, and she seems to want to speak to this as well.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
before
who would like to go first? Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Madam Chair, if I can just respond, I can understand the concerns with the growth in this area and the traffic impacts. Those are have been addressed, and I believe Ms. Georges can speak to that. I would note that what's really important in terms of this location, it is one of the primary regional nodes and corridors within the town. And so the growth that's coming is anticipated to be transit supportive and to support that longer term objective. And so with the implementation of this, we are balancing the need to provide for housing, including the purpose-built housing, with the shift as we go forward to support transit supported and transit oriented development at this location. And I know staff have spoken quite strongly to that in their report as well.
Okay. Mr. Agostino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Raymore Agostino. I'm actually the Vice President of Development with Daniels, and wanted to give a little bit of historical context around the detailed site plan process that we've gone through. I can let the traffic consultant speak specifically to the traffic matters, but wanted to advise that we've really worked with staff as our plan consultant, Ms. Anderson, has indicated. We are not building to the maximum density permitted on this site. We purposely, from the get-go, when we look to site buildings on the property, have created a significant sort of green space system in the center of the property, rather than going and lining the surrounding property or extending podiums to take up green space, which is rather a nice urban design context, especially with the stormwater management pond sort of kitty corner to this green space. And in doing so, we've looked at varying the heights of the buildings, and specifically placing the additional 2 stories on the west side of the property, where the impact of height and shadowing is minimized to the adjacent property. So really have gone through a very sensitive and thoughtful process, through a very detailed site plan process with staff, to address those comments for an area of Oakville that is planned for growth and transit-oriented development. We could have squished the buildings down, still maintain 4.42 times coverage, and had units in a different configuration. Or we could have gone closer to the 5 times coverage, and still, that would have generated more traffic and more density in this site. So I think the important factor that we've had here, where we've worked very collaboratively with staff, is to ensure that we are really planning for a sensitive development that fits within the context of this area. And the additional 2 stories are strategically placed in a location that minimizes the overall impact. I don't see this as a question of us increasing traffic per se, or increasing density in this area. We are working well within the permitted density and below the permitted density that is here. So I'd like to ask the committee to sort of examine it within that context of not necessarily adding more density, but strategically placing the density and creating a sensitive site plan that addresses those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Agostino. I'm assuming that Ms. Georges is the traffic consultant.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so as part of the site plan application process, we did undertake a traffic impact study to understand the impacts of the proposed development on the surrounding road network. And so as part of our analysis, we looked at some intersections in the area, including Post Ridge Drive and Dundas, Post Ridge Drive and Silver Maple Road, and then the proposed right in, right out access onto Dundas. And our analysis concluded that the proposed development would have an acceptable impact on the surrounding road network, and that the intersections would operate with acceptable levels of service. And our study was also undertaken in accordance with the town of Oakville's transportation impact assessment guidelines. So overall, we've concluded that the proposed development will have an acceptable impact on the surrounding road network.
Are there any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Certainly, and just to clarify for the public, that report is prepared for Daniels, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions or items of clarification? Mr. Flemington, are you still reserving the right to come back later, or you're ready now?
Actually, yeah, yeah, just with regards to what I have reviewed, and as well as, you know, the presentation and I've listened to with regards to the traffic and with regards to the analysis that the town has done on this application. Like I'm going with the fact that and again I'll ask staff that, you know, from the analysis that you looked at, from the traffic report that was submitted, you know, there aren't going to be any negative impacts now or within the future based on what the development that is occurring there, as well as what the transportation plan is for the future in that area. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, I agree that it's been assessed with all those factors in mind. The site plan process is quite a robust process where there's lots of professionals that prepare the application, prepare the reports that we rely on. They are kind of independent opinions on an application, and they do that for various applications around the town. So I think that's really important to recognize that staff rely on that independent thinking and reports that come forward. And this property, as been mentioned, isn't being increased in density because of the height. It's more redistribution of the height on the of the density on the property. As mentioned, it could be a different configuration that may not be actually as desirable for this property. So that's where we've come to this conclusion in viewing the official plan policies and the, you know, this is a area of town that is meant for growth and is intended for growth. And this corner, this intersection is intended for this type of development. And really what we're looking at is a redistribution of the density on this property to allow for variation in heights to be, which responds to a lot of the urban design direction of the town.
Thank you. And then, sorry, the kind of follow-up before was with regards to the comments on the queued parking for the daycare. Mm-hmm. So, and sorry, I guess this is a question to the applicant and their agent who had commented on it before. So Ms. Murray had said, like, you know, the use for that could be allocated or used by others. And then, you know, your response was, well, we'll address that issue by signage stating that it's only for that use. So, for example, a daycare use. Is that something that would be policed by who? Like, you know, I mean, you have this development that has a lot of different uses that are part of it. So who would police and how would you manage that if it's specifically for that daycare use is my question, because I know there's times where there's signage that's posted of people, you know what, they're running in to grab their coffee, they don't care, and away they go. So I was just curious as to, you know, what are the thoughts on that?
Okay. I see Mr. Agostino's hand up. I think he wants to address that question, correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I can address it. So on the site plan, there is only one unit that is planned for a commercial use. And therefore, it would either be a daycare or another, well, in order for it to be a daycare, it would be that sort of one use. So there wouldn't be a scenario where we would have both a daycare and another commercial use. We simply don't have the space for it as shown on the site plan today.
Sorry, can we just have staff just put the site plan back up just so that I can visualize it? Please.
And as I understand it, there is plenty of other parking to serve the development. It's just this queue that's available for that one unit particularly, correct?
That's correct. And it's also my understanding through you, Madam Chair, that this is a requirement and possibly our planner or traffic consultant can speak to it. This queued parking requirement is an old standard, I believe, in the Oakville zoning bylaw, that if in the current, more current bylaw that applies south of Dundas Street here, these queuing requirements for daycares are not required. So it is something that is unique in terms of the north side of Dundas Street. But I probably, Ms. Anderson or a traffic consultant can respond to that a bit better. And so maybe before that, to address the question around the daycare use, you can see the one commercial unit that's at the base of block 3 on the sort of between the two buildings. That is the one unit that would be for the daycare. And it's approximately, I believe, just under 5,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or items of clarification? As far as I'm concerned, the queue parking is actually an added facility if that daycare actually goes through. I think without it, things would probably be more hectic. Ms. Anderson, you had something to add?
Oh, Madam Chair, I was just going to say further to Mr. Agostino's comment, it is correct that the new Oakville zoning bylaw 2014-14 does not have this provision. In fact, it would allow for the parking for that particular use based on the standards that would be for mixed use or visitor parking. So we're just addressing this as justified through shared parking. But the key is here, it would accommodate an appropriate amount of parking.
Okay. Anything further? All right. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone raised their hand in terms of attendees who would like to address the committee or anyone called in with that respect?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. Then we're ready to take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to recognize that the plan for the Upper Oakville core, I know it's been in some development over the past for some time now, and I do recognize that development plans, or sorry, the plans for that area are a little more dense and have more of an area that is built out with the type of development that is being done here. So I just want to recognize that, because for the number of years I've been doing this, I've seen that come to fruition, and as well as the comments made by the applicant's agent and by the staff saying, what the purpose and the intent of the bylaw is and where it is going. I think that that's important for me to put forth prior to me moving my motion. I also want to note that, they have the ability to build to a density, a maximum density that's permissible that they are not. So even by adding the extra floors that they're looking for to add, They are not building out to the maximum density that is permitted. And as well, noting that the comments with regards to the articulation and the variation in the height within that core and how it steps back. I think that is, complementary for the site. Noting that, there are some other buildings that have been built there in the last, 5 years where there were other floors added. So I think that part of that is, looking at the overall, plan for that area. I also want to note that, from the reports that have been provided, I don't, I know traffic is traffic, but, if you do note the study that was put forth, and to my committee member Murray's comments that yes, that study was done for the applicant, I think that, these consultants are professional as to what they're putting forth. And, I don't think that, it's going to have a significant negative impact for the type of development that is in that area. Sometimes when the cities are growing it to an extent, and our town has picked that area to be sort of like a different urban core, I think that, that those studies that also take into account what the future transportation plan is in that area, and hopefully that also encompasses green transportation, such as our buses, as well as bicycling and others. So I just wanted to comment on all of that, because I am going to move a motion, having reviewed the application and the written submission, as well as noting that the town's written staff report is in support of the motion. I do note that there was a letter in opposition that was addressed. I'm going to move that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it does meet the tests of the Planning Act and that it's minor in nature. And I will include the two following conditions. One, that the buildings be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated December 17th, 2021, and elevation drawings to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. And the second condition, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? All those opposed? Okay, the application has been approved, one opposed. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, while everyone exits, and then as you bring Mr. Talowski back, I'll just excuse myself for a second, okay?
Yes, not a problem.
Okay, thank you. We are moving on to Application CAV 049 of 2022 at 1145 Kerry Road. Again, it's CAV 049 of 2022 at 1145 Kerry Road. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. Or if you're in the attendance, you simply raise your hand and you'll be invited into the panel to speak to the committee. Who is the agent here? I'm going to try this. Mr. Asimovich?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep, that's
okay.
very good. Thank you.
If you can turn your camera on, please. And you may raise the raised hand. You can take that down. And the secretary to it. Perfect. Excellent. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm rather impressed by your ability to speak in French as well, just so you know. That was...
Oh, yeah, I had an audience tonight. I was kind of hoping people were trickling in.
It was quite interesting, actually. I always tell my friends that COA is better than Netflix, but they don't believe me. My name is Dan Achimovich. I'm the agent for this file 1145. It is my second time, unfortunately, for this project in front of you. In January of 2021, we came in front of you to ask for a couple of very minor variances on this very minor addition to the existing house. At the rear of the property, we expanded the master bedroom or the principal bedroom, and we built a basically a pool house for the equipment for the new pool at the back of the property. Unfortunately, during the construction, during last summer, some decisions were made during the construction that I was not aware of. And a couple of the things that are bubbled in red were expanded. The one at the back of the house itself is the covered rear porch. The hatched area with the 45-degree hatch was added to the existing roof that's in light gray color during construction beyond what was approved on the building permit set from January of 2021. In addition, the shed at the rear of the property was unfortunately made slightly bigger than what we had asked for in, again, January 2021, due to the fact that some of the pool equipment showed up and it was much larger, so they simply built it a little bit bigger. When we reapplied for permit revisions last summer after this process has taken place, the two variances were flagged by the planning department at that point. We had applied for the committee of adjustment, and here we are. The owners did have some, issues with COVID and so on, so they didn't really get back to us in a timely manner. So we are finally here asking for permission for these two minor variances. One of them is the increase in the total lot coverage due to the fact that the shed as well as the roof at the back count towards that. So we actually increased from 25.41% that were approved last year to 26.83, an increase of 1.42%. In addition, the setback from the property line for the proposed pool shed is 0.53 instead of the allowable 0.6. And that's the reason why I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Asimovich. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called to request to speak to this application or raise their hand?
There's no one at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to be back. Madam Chair, I'm satisfied that this application meets the four tests of the Planning Act. In a situation like this, I always try to treat it as if this was on the original application when it had been approved, and I believe that would be the case. This is a very large property, small variances. I note that there's no objection from the neighbors, so I believe that does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would recommend approval, subject to the existing accessory building and rear porch expansion be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated September 2021, and that the approval expires if the building permit hasn't issued within 2 years.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Simovich.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You too, good night. Okay, the last item on our agenda is CEV 050 of 2022 at 95 Dundas Street West. Again, it's CEV 050 of 2022 at 95 Dundas Street West. If you are interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. If you are in the audience, simply raise your hand and you'll be invited to speak to the panel. Ms. McEwen, good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Catherine McEwen from Corsiac Urban Planning, here on behalf of Madame E. Homes. I'm happy to do a brief presentation for you if you wish. We're requesting a number of variances for parking spaces in an underground garage that has been constructed, and there's several minor variances due to technicalities from the pouring of concrete.
Yeah, we've read the application and the report, but just simply for the benefit of the public, you can run through it quickly and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So the property is located at 95 Dundas Street West, and the site's currently under construction with 2 6-story buildings. The associated parking garage has also been in construction. Next slide, please. We're requesting variances to permit 3 columns to encroach into required parking space widths and to increase the permitted length of obstruction for 2 parking spaces. Next slide, please. So due to a minor construction error, 3 of the columns within the underground parking structure encroach into the minimum parking space width. As a result, a reduction of 0.02 meters of the minimum parking space width dimension is requested for parking spaces 57, 58, and 236. 57 and 58 requesting 2.58 meters, whereas 2.6 is required. And for 236 requesting 2.88, whereas 2.9 is required. For parking spaces 230 and 231, a double structural column was required to support the structure above. As a result, we're requesting an increase of 0.15 meters to the permitted obstruction length. This is to have an obstruction length of 1.3 meters for these spaces. Vehicles can still safely maneuver in and out of these spaces, and vehicles can easily be entered and exited. The requested variances meet the 4 tests, and we've reviewed the report and find the 2 conditions to be acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Murray, you have a question?
I do. Through you, Madam Chair, to our applicant this evening. I'm wondering if those parking spots have already been sold in conjunction with the units, and if the variances or the the spot being made smaller has been disclosed to the purchaser?
I'm not sure if the unitized parking spaces have been assigned to units yet. I can certainly find that out. I know that traffic had commented back that they weren't concerned with these ones. I know in the past they've requested that purchasers be made aware, but in this case, traffic didn't seem to have concerns with the 0.02, so 2 centimeters encroaching.
Thank you.
They will still fit a regular sized vehicle though, correct?
Definitely, like the overall parking space exceeds what is required. It's just the narrow column width. I don't know if you want to pull up the last picture at the kind of entrance to the parking space.
Okay. Any other questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if no one has requested to speak to the matter or called in, we can take the matter into committee.
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. Go ahead, Ms. Murray, thank you. Oh, you're muted. I was wondering what's happening.
Sorry, my bad. Having conducted my site visit, but more like a DBW, drive by and wave, because of the traffic on Dundas. But I know this location well. Having taken into account and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's comments, and I'm noting that there are no objections noted by the public, written or oral, today. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application to the variance subject to the following conditions. And those are that the building be built in general accordance with the plan dated January 12th, 2022, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if the building permit has not been issued for the construction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. McEwen.
Good evening.
Next item on our agenda is confirmation of the meetings for March 8th. Who would like to move the minutes? Ms. Murray. Mr. Hardcastle's not here. Is no one else going to?
Well, I wasn't at that meeting.
Oh, yes. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Ms. Murray, okay. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:59 p.m.